Hi, I'm Renny Hartman. I'm here today to talk about the invisible Addie LaRue that Literary Gladiators has been looking at with several people, and I will have to say, unfortunately, I'm not fond of the book. The book is extraordinarily interesting, and the author has written books previously, and she's written them in this genre, sort of occult a little bit, not quite horror, but still leaning in the mystic in some ways. And this is the Faust story again. Faust sold his soul to the devil, but he did it to have all the information in the world, all the knowledge of the world. He didn't actually do it to be exactly rich and famous, which is the way the story is always told. He wanted to be the most knowledgeable person. And I think that was, if we go back and look, today everybody wants 15 minutes of fame on a podcast. If you go back and look at previous cultures, and getting knowledge was something that was unusual. You didn't always get educated. I've just watched the Warner Brother production using the nieces and nephews and grandchildren of the 4 men who started Warner Brothers. They were a family of 12. They came over from Russia. Part of that is today Poland. And the father came, the original father came, he said, because he couldn't get his children educated in any way, and he could barely work. And so when they came to the United States, they were uneducated bums, quote unquote, they were called, because they didn't have any background, they didn't have any money, and they did things like Jack Warner, who's going to become the head of Warner Brothers when it's fabulous in the 30s and 40s, said as a child he went out and shined shoes, and he had to sometimes shine them into the dark, because if you didn't have $2, you couldn't go home, you wouldn't get fed. And if you look at the Marx Brothers, they will say the same thing. There were 10 in the family of the Marx Brothers, and as children, as they got to be not very big, 4, 5, 6 years old, they got sent off on the trains up to the Poconos or the Catskills to get a job or to learn to do something and not come back until they had some money. Today, we're giving people money. People that come across the southern border, they can have Social Security, they can have Medicare, Medicaid. We're going a little bit nuts. I'll get back to the book. We have a young lady in the 1700s who is in a tiny village and feels constricted. She wants to be able to leave. Once in a while, she's able to leave because her father is an artist in a way. He carves and he sells birds that are carved, and he takes them to a market sometimes, and she can get to go with him out of the village to where he goes to the market, which is a little bit bigger city. But that's about all of her experience. She's smart in a way that she knows that there's a bigger world out there. I don't know at the time, we're in, I think, 1714. I don't know at the time if she would have really known how big the world was, how much was available. She certainly, I guess, knew about Paris. She's going to end up in Paris. She can draw, and she makes this picture of a man that is her lover in her mind. Dark hair, curly hair, dark eyes. And because fate is on her side or not on her side, he is reproduced and comes to her out of the dark. He's always mostly covered in dark and shadow. And he gives her the deal to become immortal and go wherever she wants to go. And so the book covers 300 years. We go from to 2014. In 2014, she falls in love with a young man in a bookstore, of all the places you would fall in love. And it happens that he can remember her. One of the quirks in the book is that she can survive immortally, but nobody will remember her. If you met her today and you met her tomorrow, you wouldn't remember her from the earlier meeting. She cannot work. So she has to learn to steal. She has to learn to live on her own. And I'll be perfectly honest, I don't believe that. I do not believe in those days, in the rotten winters and sometimes flooding summers and so forth. While she was immortal, she wouldn't get killed, but I don't think she would have survived in really very good shape after 300 years. Why that's added, I don't know. And also, in theory, she's been to Italy, she's been to Germany, she's been all over, and she's been reproduced by artists. She's in famous paintings that hang in museums, and that is hard to consider also because when she went to pose the next day, the artist wouldn't remember her and would be not likely to use her again if they're doing a long-term sitting. I don't know how that would work out. She's not being shot by a photograph. Any photograph of her is smeared. Her face is always blurred. You can't see her face in a photograph because, in a sense, she's not entirely there in some way. She's able to fall in love with the young man in the bookstore because, oddly enough, he made his own kind of deal with the devil, but only to live a year and to enjoy everything you could possibly enjoy in a year. People look at him, people want his picture, people invite him places, he's meeting all kinds of people, but in a year. And so Addie wants to remove that deal from him so that he will not have to go to the devil at the end of the year, and therefore in the end she throws herself in with the devil that she has always fought morally, and she gives up that morality. Whether she gives up her soul exactly is not said, but in order to sacrifice the young man, not to sacrifice the young man, she in a sense sacrifices herself. Now maybe if I were younger, I would appreciate this a little bit more. I think I'm going to give the book to my sister who has a book club. I couldn't really call this, it's not an occult book, it's not a horror book, it's a chick lit book in a sense, for women, and maybe for younger women, because Addie makes her deal at 23, and so she stays 23 forever. When we get to her in 2014 and she meets the love of her life, she is still 2014, and the only thing that they have together, in a sense, is that when she meets his friends, they have to meet her all over again, but he remembers her, and that, to her, makes a tremendous impression, and that's why, in the end, that becomes the love of her life, but she loses him. I don't know, that might be even romantic. Lost causes are always the most romantic. In the Warner Brothers, that I've just been looking at, and I'm looking at again, of course the first movie they pull up is Casablanca. And in Casablanca, at the end of the film, Rick gives up Ilsa. And she leaves with her husband, Laszlo. When they shot the film, they shot 3 endings, tested it on audiences. The other could be she stays with Rick. I don't know what the third one would be. But this, of course, is the better choice because they will always have Paris, but they have lost each other. Lost causes are the most romantic, and lost loves are the most romantic. So maybe, in the end, the invisible Addie LaRue has a most